Hey everybody, and welcome to another instalment of Board Games Hitting My Table. So this is a series where I talk about all the board games that I've played recently, this example being for the first half of February 2022. So I'm going to start up with a game called Startups by Oink Games. This is a game that really did take me by surprise last year. It's a very clever little card game where you're trying to collect these sets of cards representing these different companies. But if you manage to collect these sets and not have the majority at the end of the game, then you're going to end up giving points to your opponents. And it's a very tense game with that big reveal at the end. Definitely my favourite game by Oink Games up to this point. And I have not called on this one single bit. You know, I really liked it when I first played it, and I like it just as much now. So I played a 3-player game of this one. Again, really tight game. I think... I don't know what the result was, but still, I know we all really enjoyed this one. Very clean rule set, but it does feel different and it feels clever. So yeah, I really do like this one. And it scales really well too, because it goes to actually 3 to 7 players, which a lot of these games don't really do. But I do prefer it at the lower player counts, but it's nice to have that option. But yeah, this one's still going very strong for me. I would show you what it looks like, but unfortunately the pieces are going to go everywhere when I open the box. So that is Startups. Great little card game, and I highly recommend that one. I'm going to show a couple pictures here because I don't have the physical copies with me. So first up is going to be for another Oink game called Deep Sea Adventure. This one is a push your luck style game, another one that scales pretty well. This one you are trying to get as many points as you can by diving deeper and deeper. And as soon as you pick up one of these treasure pieces that you're diving for, the oxygen is going to start running out, and you're sharing that oxygen supply with all the other players. Then you want to make it back to the submarine before you lose all your precious loot. That's basically what the game consists of. I do like the concept of this one. Maybe I like the concept more than the game itself. So I played this one recently at 6 players. And I think I have a bit of an issue with this one because it seems like you are really at the mercy of other players, because as soon as somebody picks up a bit of treasure, it pretty much just forces everybody else to start picking up treasure and heading back to that submarine. So it's kind of almost scripted on what you do in this game, and I do like it, and I don't want to make it sound overly negative, but I think I've kind of done with this game. I think there's better push your luck games out there, and again, it just feels like you're too much at the mercy of the other players and dice rolls basically. But a really cool concept, but one I think I'm starting to tire of. The second game that I haven't got the physical copy of here is Micro Macro Crime City. So we played a couple more games of this one just to finish off the box. And yeah, this one still is such a unique game, a real fresh design. One that won the, I think it won the Spiel des Jahres last year actually, because it is so family friendly. But well, at least the idea of it is, but the actual content of the game is quite dark, which is quite funny. It's basically a game of Where's Waldo or Where's Wally. And you're trying to solve these murder mysteries by determining, the layout of the land and backtracking people and stuff like that. Such a creative idea. I still really enjoy this one. Again, I think maybe I'm done with it now. I've played all the cases in the base box. I've not really got that massive incentive to go on to the expansion content or the second edition. But I did say that the more complex missions on the base game I did really enjoy, and I definitely think I went out on a high with these ones. And I think that probably the last mission I did was probably my favourite one so far. But I still recommend it. I think everyone needs to experience this game because I think it's going to be hard not to enjoy it. Quite a funny little game. Next up, I have Sweet Landia. This game was a game recommended to me by one of my subscribers, because they know I like auction games. And this one is a kind of auction and bidding style game that you are basically trying to bid for these cards, almost in like the same method of a game like For Sale, where you each have a hand of cards with different numbers on them, and you're playing them simultaneously, and whoever gets the highest number gets to pick which card they want. And this game actually works quite differently, because all these different cards you're collecting score in different ways. So they might score if you have, certain other cards in your hand, or sometimes you can keep them back permanently and make sure you score them each round. A really nice little filler game actually, one that impressed me quite a bit, and I think the more I play this one, the more I'm enjoying it. Another game that scales pretty well. I think I played a 3-player game in this one, and it works perfectly fine on that player count. Some good little decisions here, managing your hand, but still not overly convoluted, and it just keeps simple. And it's a nice little filler auction game or bidding game. So I think this one's been massively overlooked, and I'll be getting a review of this one out soon because it's a solid little game that I think more people should enjoy. Next up, I have Flea Market. This is a Leo Colvini game, and this one is actually a game that's another one that's growing on me. So when I first played this one, it's a very light game. I'm talking, feather light, very much at the mercy of dice rolls and things. But it somehow works for this game, and you end up feeling like you get a lot of fun from this game despite the massive swings of luck, because again it's only a 20-minute game and it is feather light. Basically, you are trying to bid for these different items here, and when you claim them, and these bids are completely dictated by your dice roll, so everybody's going to roll a pair of dice. And if I roll, say, an 11 here, that means I've only got the option to bid 11, whereas my opponent will be the next, the next person who's rolled the second highest amount will then get the opportunity to buy one of these items, but obviously paying their dice roll and so on. So it's like, how much are you willing to pay for these items? And the idea is, once you get these items, you're going to get them in front of you, and if ever that number is rolled again, then it goes back up for auction, but you get a little bit of a premium on top of that as well. And it's a race to get to a certain amount of money. And you know what? This is one of those games that hits that nice niche of, I'm always kind of in the mood to play it, because it offers enough decision and enough fun, but still it doesn't give you too much to consider, and it's like a proper old school filler game that I think is a lot of fun. So that is Flea Market. Again, another review for that one dropping soon, but I think it's an absolutely charming game. That is Flea Market. Next up, I have another dice-driven game. This is Dice Miner. This one, I suppose, got moderately popular last year. It's a dice drafting game, and I suppose a set collection game, and with a really cool drafting system. As basically, you are rolling a bunch of dice, and they all go into this mountainscape here. And when you're drafting, you draft from the pinnacles of these mountaintops. So you can see I could draft a 2 here, or the 1 here, or this symbol here, or this symbol here. But anything beneath that, I cannot take. And you're basically just trying to collect sets of these different pip values, going from 1 to 5. And you get reroll tokens, you get things that convert negative points into positive points. Very simple stuff, but I do like that drafting system. I will say that I think maybe I wasn't expecting too much from this when I first played it. So therefore, my initial impressions were very positive, because it was way better than I thought it was going to be. Now I am starting to call on it a little bit, because there's not a massive amount of replayability here. And the game we played most recently, a 3-player game, the first kind of batch of rolls that we made, there was like no combos you can get whatsoever. And I think we all left the first round with next to no points at all, which felt a little bit deflating. But it does have a nice forward momentum to it, where each time you take a new round, you actually keep the dice from the previous round. So it does have that nice forward momentum. But it's a pleasant game, a really nice family game. But again, one that I think is kind of plateaued for me, and I don't think it's ever going to hit those heights that I did have when I first played it, because again, I know what it is all about now. But that is Dice Miner, still a good one, but not a great one. Next up, we have Sheriff of Nottingham. So I've managed to get a 6-player game night together this month, so that's quite rare for me. And with my gaming group, we always tend to get a game of Sheriff of Nottingham out, because it is a favourite amongst my friends. This one is kind of a classic, almost bluffing style game. You're putting these items into your little bag, and then you're trying to bluff to the sheriff of what you've put in that bag. Are you telling them the truth? I'm going to force them to search you, and therefore they'd have to pay you some money, or are you going to lie and smuggle in some contraband? So this one we actually played with one of the modules for the Merry Men expansion, which was a module about I think it was like certain laws that came into play, which mean that at that particular round something could happen that wouldn't normally be able to happen. I don't think that added a tremendous amount to the game, and to be honest, I think I feel that way about most of the Merry Men expansion modules. They're not really great, but I don't know, I suppose they're a welcome addition if you play this game to death. But yeah, this one, it always seems to go down well, because it's kind of hard not to enjoy it. There's always those funny moments where you bluffed people and smuggle lots through, and bluffing and double bluffing, all that kind of thing. But I will say I probably did peak on this one a few years ago now. I've played this a lot of times, and again, I think I'm kind of done with it. But it's one of those games where if it gets back to the table, I'm certainly not gonna argue not to play it, because it is fun and it's simple, and it always goes down well. But yeah, that is Sheriff of Nottingham. Always a crowd pleaser, and it does certainly scale well for those 5 or 6 player mark. Next up, I have a game that I talked about I think a couple of months ago now, and I played this one again. This is Fiesta Mexicana. This is, I think nobody knows about this game, but it's a game where you are trying to acquire all these different kind of Mexican dishes on your player board here, but the way you acquire them is pretty unique, as you have this board here with all these different numbers on them, and depending on the orientation of those numbers, depends on what you can bid in order to put a particular dish that's up for auction into that particular spot. And you're basically trying to build patterns and things, get points from these objective cards, and trying to match up these different dips together in order to get some bonus points. It's a really cool concept, one that I don't think lands quite as good as you think it would in practice. I do think it becomes a bit more enjoyable as the game develops and you start to get filter down and start to get a bit, be a bit more restricted on what you can place on the board and not to ruin your points. It kind of reminds me of a game like Calico, where the more you do things, the harder and more restrictive it becomes. But I like the game. I think the scoring is probably one of my biggest downfalls of the game, because I think you have 3 objectives, and it feels like 3 objectives aren't really enough to work with, enough to be an interesting puzzle, and you end up just buying things because they have points on them just in the first place. So I don't think it really, I just don't think it landed it wasn't quite as satisfying as I think it should be, despite that cool mechanism where you're kind of rotating your board and revealing new bids depending on where they are on that sheet. So it's a close miss, I think, for me, or a near miss. But I do like how different it is, and it does feel unique. But yeah, I'm not quite sure if it delivers on what it tries to do. So that is Fiesta Mexicana. Next up, kind of on that same theme, is a game called Bristol 1350. This one, gorgeous production, and again, I'm not going to get everything out here because it's going to go everywhere. But this one is almost like a semi-cooperative deduction style game, or like a social deduction game, basically set in the time of the Black Plague or the Black Death, and you're basically sharing these wagons with other players, and then you're trying to get these wagons or these carts out of Bristol without being infected by the plague. But the way you have that plague is by collecting these other cards, and if you ever go above a certain amount of these kind of plague numbers, then you have the plague for the rest of the game, and you're trying to contaminate all the other players. And you're rolling dice in almost like a Yahtzee style fashion, trying to either keep the plague down or try to move your wagon and things. And I really do like the concept of this one. However, some of the gameplay mistakes are massive. There's fundamentally broken gameplay rules. For example, once you have the plague, there's no incentive to do anything. But I think the rules say that you have to try and contaminate all the other players. But then again, if all the other players lose, then they win. So it's kind of completely broken, where people can choose to attack the game if they want to and end up winning. And it doesn't really make sense, and the incentive isn't there once you're out of the game. Additionally, not like this is a problem with me personally, but I kind of try to look at rules objectively. If you ever go above the number of the plague value a number of plague numbers that you end up catching the plague, if you end up going below that number again, then you could technically lie about not having the plague, which just felt like a bit of a weird choice for me. But it's, again, I wanted to like this one. I think it could have done with a lot more development, and somebody who's maybe a bit more experienced at making balanced games, having a look at this one rather than just that pure, that rambunctious fun factor. But I find it hard to enjoy games at times when I know the rules aren't quite slick and well thought of. So yeah, unfortunately that was a bit of a miss for me. I kind of go up and down with this one. Sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't, and I find it hard to get past those rules mistakes. But that is Bristol 1350. Next up, this is the Bunk. So you can see here a lot of these games are for the bigger player counts. This is another game that plays fantastically at 6 players. This one really did. I love this game. This is absolutely fantastic. This is an older Bruno Fiduci and Leo Colvini game again. So this is a game with that real kind of Las Vegas feel to it, as you have all these tables and you're moving your pieces around this board, putting money on these tables, and then basically trying to trap people into going to certain tables if they have a big amount of money there, because you steal the money from them. Or you can kind of put a double value token on or card on these tables to double the value of that, of all the poker chips on on that table. Or you can even use a bluffing card, and it's probably one of the most high energy, big payoff style games that you can imagine, because sometimes there's a massive stack of money there. You're in range to get to that table, and people put markers down there, probably doubling it. and everybody else is expecting somebody to trap, and then nobody does trap, and you end up getting a massive amount of money. It's a very swingy game. One round you can be miles behind, next round you can win hundreds and hundreds of thousands, and then end up going straight into the lead. So it's very back and forth like that. But because the game is so quick and it is so tense and high energy, it feels right for what the game is. So it has that real high stakes feel to it. And when you're behind, you are incentivized to push your luck even more. So yeah, love this one. Been a big hit for me, and I can't see that changing anytime soon. So yeah, love playing this one at the higher player counts. That is the Bunk. And the final game that I'm going to talk about on this installment is Picture Perfect. I think this was another game that was on my monthly review last month. This one is another super cool concept, as you are trying to basically arrange all these different people to make this photograph. And all these different people are going to have different needs. So like this lady might say, oh, I want to stand next to this gentleman. Or this one might say, I want to stand next to the table. Or I want to have my face hidden, and all these different things. And the way you're doing that is by revealing information each round by cards that have been randomly placed into these envelopes. And each round you're going to have a different method of gaining that information, swapping that information, and all that kind of stuff. I think the key concept is fantastic. I'm enjoying it. I think it's great. It plays in again only about 30 minutes, which is perfect for the game. I would say that the game does, for some reason, try to absolutely thumb in some auction mechanisms which do not work for the game at all. So like there's some weird mechanism where you bid for these information with the items on the table, and it just doesn't feel right. It feels quite jarring and it doesn't fit the rest of the game. I'd rather just swap information from the middle or swap with other players, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that for me, I think in a future kind of for future games, I'll just take all those auction cards out, because again, it just doesn't feel quite right, and it feels like all of a sudden you're enjoying the flow of the game, and then an auction card comes up and everything just stops, and it feels like it just doesn't feel like it fits the rest, if that makes sense. So yeah, a house rule in the future, I will not be playing with those auction rules. But on top of that, I love it. Actually, a good game, so one of the only games that uses memory to a good standard. I normally don't like memory games, but this one does it very well, where you could only look at the cards available to you at that time, and then you might need to remember that this guy wants to be next to this person, where you could forget that and start moving things around and losing yourself points. But a really nice family weight game, again, another fresh theme, and yeah, I'm still enjoying it. So that is Picture Perfect. So that concludes this video really. So a nice bunch of games there. Nice to manage to get a games night in with 6 players. Something rare for me. But some good titles here, some party games, some of these kind of bluffing games, and still some clever little card games like Startup. So yeah, that concludes the video. So if you have enjoyed the video, please hit like and subscribe to the channel, and check out my other videos too. And for everyone else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye.